Hungover from cheap whiskey, George Bledsoe made a simple error that many people make. He mistakenly dialed his own number on the telephone, BE 85883. He did not get the busy signal. He should have, but he did not. Instead, the phone began clicking, and an operator's voice announced, dimly, as if from a great distance, "That's a ship-to-shore connection, sir." George Bledsoe, just then realizing that he had, in fact, dialed his own number, said, "What the hell?" There was a great deal of static, and then a man's voice said, "All right, who is it?" George blinked. The voice was loud and arrogant. It sounded somehow familiar, but he could not place it. But George was not by nature a deferential person. "Who in hell are you, friend?" he said. The voice paused a moment, and then it said, "This is George Bledsoe." "Look, friend," George Bledsoe said, "you can take that and—" He started to hang up and then stopped. "How could—" "That's right," the voice said. "How could I know? You let it sink in a minute, George. And then you get that tablet of paper out of the top dresser drawer and get yourself a pencil out of the box on the refrigerator, and you get ready to write some things down. We don't have all day." George was staring at the phone in disbelief. It was his voice, as if on a tape recorder. He blinked and found himself sweating. But, unused to taking orders, he said, "Why should I?" "Don't argue, damn it. I'm talking to you from the October 9th. I'm sitting in a boat 28 miles and 2 months from where you are, and I've got a pile of newspapers, Georgie, that haven't even been printed yet back there in August where you're talking from. I'm going to make you rich." It sounded like a con game. George's eyes narrowed. "Why should you?" "Because I'm you, you stupid bastard. Get that paper and start writing. I'm going to give you the names of some racehorses and of 3 issues of stock and a baseball team. You better get them right the first time. There won't be another." George was staring around the room dizzily. "How can— Damn it, shut up. I don't know how. It just is." He got the notepad and got them all down. 26 racehorses and 3 stocks and the baseball team that was going to win the World Series. Then the phone clicked and the line went dead. Thoroughly dead. He could not even get the dial tone. During the next 2 months, the horses all won at their different tracks, and the stocks all split, shot up, declared unexpected dividends. George was able to make himself a millionaire after the first 5 weeks. He won $250,000 on the World Series alone. It was on this last that a bookie who hadn't hedged his bets adequately against George's $100,000 layout was forced to offer him his own luxury fishing boat anchored off Key West as part payment. George took it. He knew that it was somehow in the nature of things that he must be aboard a boat with a telephone on October 9th. He would be getting a phone call. The ordaining of it all took no effort on his part. He was called a week later by the telephone company, who wished to know if he planned to continue the ship-to-shore service on the boat. He told them yes, and then, as if it were an afterthought, mentioned that he would like his old Miami number transferred to the boat, BE 85883. Then, when he had bet the final horse on his list, he hired a chauffeured limousine to take him to Key West. He did not go alone. With him were 2 attractive young ladies, a gambling friend, a large box of frozen prime steaks, and 2 cases of $20 a bottle whiskey, and a pile of newspapers. It was during the ebullient stage of his drunkenness on this automobile ride that a striking thought occurred to him. What if he decided not to go to the boat at all? His mind fogged at the thought. How could he not be on that boat October 9th? He had, in a sense, already been there. That part of his future was a part of his past, and you couldn't change the past. But you could change the future, couldn't you? He could not understand it. He drank more whiskey and tried to forget about it. It wasn't important anyway. What was important was his $1,200 platinum wristwatch, his $200 shoes, his cashmere jacket, his bank accounts. He had come a long way in those 2 months. One of the girls, whose name was supposed to be Lily, snuggled up to him. The boat was big, sleek, polished, and beautifully equipped. They went aboard, and Lily giggled and whistled at the mahogany bar, the inner spring mattresses, the hi-fi, the impeccable little stainless steel galley. George, suddenly pensive, left Lily fixing drinks at the bar for the party and went into the boat's little air-conditioned cabin to look around. Somehow the sight of it shook him. Sitting on a small table next to a tan leather armchair was a bright, glossy red telephone. He walked over to it slowly and read the number on the dial. The man from the company had been there, for it read, Miami, BE 85883. A pilot had been hired, and he took them out that afternoon. They fished in a desultory way, too drunk and noisy to care. George drank continuously, bullied everyone loudly, made no attempt to fish. A restlessness, an impatience was eating at him. In his mind, telephones were ringing faintly all day. By sundown of the first day, they were spent, with liquor, sex, sunshine, and quarreling. The last fleeting thought to enter his mind before he fell into smirking unconsciousness was, why can't that lousy son of a bitch call me early? Why should I wait? The 9th of October was overcast, cold and muggy, as was George's disposition. He shut himself up in the cabin, waiting for the phone to ring. He swore under his breath occasionally, but otherwise passed the morning in silence. He contemplated the luxury of his silk dressing gown, the brass and mahogany furnishings around him, the good, solid teakwood deck beneath his feet, and the thought of the virtually penniless and belligerent drunkard who was about to call him from a crummy little beach house in Miami. At his feet sat the pile of newspapers, open to the sporting pages. He looked down at them now and swore. He was beginning to sweat. Outside the cabin window, the sky was dead white, hanging thickly over the cold green Atlantic horizon. They were 90 miles out from shore, the pilot had said. George continued drinking, angry now at himself, the other himself, for not having bothered to mention the time of day his call had been received. He had dialed the number at about 2 in the afternoon, but of course that didn't mean that 2 o'clock was the time it was received 2 months later. He continued looking at his watch, and at the telephone, and at his watch again, drinking. And then, just before 2 o'clock, an idea struck him. A very simple idea. Why should he wait? He would make the call himself. He had never in the 2 months since it had happened tried dialing his own number again. Why had he never thought of it? Why should he wait for that poor slob of a hungover George Bledsoe to call him? Him with his private fishing boat and his $20 whiskey. He picked up the phone angrily, with thick fingers, and began dialing. BE 85883. He smiled sweatily and leaned back in his chair. There was a click, and a voice answered.
Hello? This is BE 85883. Mrs. Arthur Cavanaugh talking.
He took a quick sip from his drink. Is George Bledsoe there?
No, he isn't. Mr. Bledsoe hasn't lived in this house for some time. Are you a friend of Mr. Bledsoe's?
Yeah, that's right, lady. I'm a friend of Mr. Bledsoe's.
Well, I don't just know how to tell you this, the woman said. But a person would have thought you'd read about it in the papers. It was in all the papers. They found Mr. Bledsoe's body, stark naked, 100 miles out in the Gulf. Oh, it was about 2 months ago they found him, and the thing is, there's nobody yet knows how he got out there.
He sat silent for what seemed a very long time. The woman must be mistaken. An old fool. A bitch. Although the cabin was tightly closed, he felt the distinct sensation of a cold wind blowing on the back of his neck. Shaking himself, he gathered his voice together. "How George Bledsoe got out there, lady, was in his private boat," he said, more to himself than to her. "The same way he's going to get back to shore, in his private boat." The wind on the back of his neck was stronger now, and he was shivering. Dimly, as if from a great and dreadful distance, he heard the old woman's voice saying,
"Why, Mr. Bledsoe never had a boat. Lord forbid! Mr. Bledsoe was a poor man."
He slammed the phone back in its cradle. It was cold in the room. He was shivering. There was a bright, grayish light in the cabin, getting brighter. He grabbed the phone again, shaking, and dialed 0 for the operator. The dial felt soft to his finger, squashy. The operator's voice came, faint.
"Ship-to-shore service."
His voice was hoarse, strange in his ears. "This is Bledsoe, BE8 5883. Is there a call for me?"
"Oh, no, sir. Oh, yes, there was a call."
"From who?" It took an effort to keep from shouting or screaming.
"Just a moment."
And then,
"That's odd, sir. It must be an error. I have the number calling listed as BE8 5883, and that's your number, sir."
"My God, I know. Put the call through." Her voice was fainter, fading away from him.
"I'm sorry, you'll have to wait until the party calls again. When he called a few moments ago, the line was busy."
The last words were so faint that he could hardly hear them. He was screaming when she finished, "Put the call through, God damn it, put the call through!" From the receiver, her voice was the minute thread of a whisper, but he heard it plainly.
"I'm sorry, sir. The line was busy."
And then the phone went altogether dead. Then, after sitting for a moment with his eyes shut against the impossible white daylight in the closed cabin, his body huddled against the cold wind that was blowing through the bulkheads of the rich man's boat that he could not possibly have been in, blowing coldly against his body through the rich man's clothes that he, George Bledsoe, could not possibly have afforded, he took a deep breath and opened his eyes, looking down. Below him, through the fading, now translucent teakwood deck, he could see the flat, ice-green water of the Atlantic Ocean, 90 miles from shore.